Hey, what's up everybody? Hey, MP here. We wanted to take a look at our new implementation of HAXcms router. And specifically, I wanted to take a look at how we are setting up the event system so that you can easily tap into the router and react to changes from the router. And we're doing this with a subscription methodology. So with any state management system, you have this connotation of the state being in a single location, and you subscribe to changes on that state. So what's behind the scenes are some just standard JavaScript events. You're setting up an event bus to which one person is subscribing to changes and one side is publishing changes. And you can optionally get the initial value of the state whenever you subscribe to it. And that's what we're going to be taking a look at here. So in this example, we have this new component called HAXcms site router. And what that does is it takes a look at something called the manifest. So at a higher level sits a component called HAXcms site builder. And its responsibility is to load in what's called a JSON outline schema file. And we can take a look at what that looks like right here. It's basically just a very structured JSON file that has items defined. And these items are related to pages that are stored on the file system. So our methodology with HAXcms is that we have this standard manifest file, and we can hand it off to different components so that they can build their UI dependent on how the manifest is put together. Well, one of the challenges is that sometimes we need to alter the manifest. So for routing, for instance, if we take a look at these locations inside of the JSON outline schema, they are the physical location of the file in terms of the file system. However, on our front end, with our router, we don't necessarily want this structure. We want to take basically this prefix off, because this prefix doesn't really make sense in the connotation of HTTP URLs. It only makes sense on the file system, as well as the index.html. So we want to set up clean URLs. So what that would mean is that we need to alter the manifest in some way. Now, our methodology is that we don't want to directly edit the manifest. We always want a source of truth for the manifest that is raw and unedited. But we want to react to changes from the manifest and build new versions of that manifest for specific pieces of our site. So for instance, if the manifest ever changes, we want the HAXcms site router to react to those changes. And we want to dynamically alter, if we take a look at this code down here. So we're reacting to changes to the manifest, and we're simply cleaning up those location URLs, and now we are in the position of handing it off to other components to use that. Excuse me. One component that we need to definitely use this new manifest for is the navigation. So as you can see, our router's working. I can move forward and backwards, but we have no navigation, and that's because we haven't hooked it up yet. So let's take a look at how we can hook it up using this new event subscription methodology. So I'm going to open up the outline player. And basically what happens with HAXcms is you define what theme you want your content rendered through. And in this case, we want to use the outline player theme. So that's why I'm working in this file. So everything you see here, UI-wise, is put together by the outline player JS. Okay, so here's our outline player. and we have this map menu. A map menu is expecting a router manifest so that it can build its navigation. Now we know, if we take a look at the, not that, come on, oh jeez, inspect, there we go. Let's take a look at the structure. So you can see that here's our HAXcms site builder, here's our outline player. And remember, this is dynamic, so these could change at any second, so it's hard to bind properties to it. A different way of binding properties from HAXcms down to here is through an event system. So this component basically wants to throw an event up that this component can listen to and can react to changes. So basically, outline player says, I need the router manifest. HAXcms says, oh, this component needs the router manifest. Here you go. So that's the flow that we're looking for. All right, so how do we do that? Well, if we go back to site router and we look at this function, this is the event handler for an event that's called HAXcms router manifest subscribe. And we have some options that we can that it's expecting in this event, one of which is callback, one of which is scope, and the other is setup. So callback is give me the string value name of a function that I should call on you whenever the router manifest changes. Second is the scope, what component should I call? And third is setup. And setup means, should I push an initial value to you whenever I first get your subscription? And that's important. That's what is typical in all state management libraries that you'll find. So we're just doing this with vanilla JavaScript here. Okay, so let's try to use this. So we know that this is the event. We're going to go to our attached lifecycle in the component that needs that router manifest. We're going to say subscribe to the router manifest. And what we're going to do is we're going to throw a new event. Now you can do this in a few different ways depending on what library you're using. For instance, in Polymer, they have a little shorthand that's called this.fire, which you can fire an event. Instead of doing that, let's just do it the old-fashioned way. So you can see what this would look like in any framework. So first we're going to say this dot dispatch event, and we're going to dispatch a new instance of custom event. And custom event takes two arguments here. One is the string base value of what the event name you're throwing up. And the other is an object of what data would you like to pass to it. So we're going to create a new object, and we're going to add to the detail property of the event object. We're going to add those three options here: the callback, the scope, and the setup. Okay, so callback, and that is, and we can just give it any name. What I like to do is I like to keep the naming structure similar. So I'm just going to define a callback with the same name as the event, camel cased, prefixed with an underscore to let us know that's a private function, and we're going to say handler. So event name handler. That's how I like to do it, but you can do it any way you want. You could put in manifest subscription, anything. Okay, so we had the callback. Now we're going to say scope. And scope is going to be just this. That's easy. So we're saying we want you to call this component that I'm currently in, because that's where you should find that function. And then setup. So setup defaults to false, but we're going to say true because we want this to be invoked immediately, so that we can get an initial value of router manifest. Awesome. So let's see. And now the other thing is we need to provide this function. Let's put this right here. It's going to have an event passed to it. And for now, let's just log that out. Okay, we'll go to our log. All right, so we haven't received anything yet. So this dispatch, custom event, I wonder if this is being caught. So those listeners we've attached to the window. So let's see if dispatching it on the window object itself changes things. And indeed it does. So that's definitely something that we can look into. So this, throwing it from the component itself, gets caught somewhere. So let's just throw it from the window, or directly onto the window object. Okay, so the window object is in essence where our event bus is listening for these changes to the router manifest. Okay, so we know that's working. So basically what's happening, as you can see, is that we're logging this event here. So if I say true or false, what should happen is that it should subscribe us to any future changes to router manifest, but it's not going to immediately call this. Okay, and that's important because you don't always want to receive the initial state. There are some cases where you just want to react to new changes, like for instance a counter. You don't want to get pushed the initial state sometimes. You just want to see if there are any changes after I've been attached to the DOM. But in many cases, you would want to set this to true. And what we can do now is now grab the new manifest. So we can say this set, we have a local property called router manifest. And we're going to push the detail, and that's where our router manifest is contained. And we're just going to do notify path. This is just a little polymer sugar to ensure that our child components understand that there have been changes to a complex object. Now, hopefully, if we refresh, all right, we now have a working navigation. If I click on the items, you can see that it has the correct URLs. And everything is working smooth. So that is how we are handling the event bus in HAXcms.